So the clear through line for me is like queerness, and like how I identify queerness is anything that pushes against the status quo. For me, anything that is for the betterment of people as just like an inherently queer work. And I just work and try to make that the intersection of everything I do is to benefit not just queer community, but all the minority communities that are oppressed by the systems we live in.
Hello and welcome to Power Beyond Pride, a weekly queer change-making podcast bringing you voices and ideas from across our fierce and fabulous spectrum to transform our world. I'm Kenyon Farrow, and I am a writer and activist based in Cleveland, Ohio.
And I'm Melodie KG, a provocateur based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We are your co-hosts on today's Queercast journey. In this episode, we are talking to Terrell Dungee, who describes himself as an angelic troublemaker, using his passion for social justice as a motivator to make positive change in North Carolina.
Terrell has been in the field of organizing since 2020 and has been working with the Carolina Federation to put more of our state and local political power back into the hands of working people.
Terrell is also a former title holder and proud member of the leather community, using his platform to promote fostering community, encouraging civic engagement, and mandating consent. So great to have you here with us at Power Beyond Pride, Terrell. Thank you so much for joining us. You grew up here in North Carolina, right? How did you start your organizing journey?
Yeah. First off, thank you, Melody and Kenyon, for having me. This is really cool to be on the pod with you. I got my start in activism and organizing when I got to do a youth leadership program back in 2008 when I was still in high school. And the really cool thing about that is it was bringing a lot of students from our public schools across the state that were interested in being change makers together, just kind of learn and empower ourselves. But a big part of that weekend was like an exercise they led us through, which was honestly my first introduction with fascism, where they do a really good job at luring you into a false sense of security. And then like halfway through the week, they run a simulation where the counselors kind of take on an authoritarian slant, and they're forcing us out of our rooms, making us eat in certain sections, eating certain things, and forcing us to comply, or like having to do some kind of physical exercise or some kind of punishment to reprimand us. And it was a really effective moment where, yes, they had a lot of the students worried and concerned about what's happening here. And again, this is probably the rise of my angelic troublemaker, but also the rise of my undiagnosed bipolar disorder. Is when I was being confined, because I was being rebellious, I eventually broke out of the confinement and I called out to the rest of the students on the campus to rise up. It was about 10 counselors and there's about 50 students. So I'm just like doing basic math. I was like, they can't suppress us all. We come together and we fight against what they're doing because they can't keep us from each other. And then doing the nonviolent protesting of singing. And then I ultimately got more students to come into the resistance, we had a full like quad full of students just singing in protest. And luckily we were all safe. It was a simulation, but it taught me so much about the power of our voices and our power of collective action to combat oppressive behavior.
That's incredible. I have so many questions about that. The first being, did you know going into that camp retreat that they were going to pull that simulation? You didn't?
No.
Okay.
Again, they really I'm waking up to Kanye West, Good Morning. Our camp counselors is like really hyping us up. And then it's like Wednesday morning, boom, boom, boom. I'm like, whoa, it is a complete 180. It's something you don't see coming. And luckily we were some of the quicker folks to catch on. They've said like sometimes they let it run into the evening just to give the students the chance to empower themselves. But yeah, it has been a experience that, again, I still call on when I'm like sharing about leadership, as well as a really just shaped of, yeah, sometimes you just got to raise your voice and then make some things shake.
Wow. That's incredible. And that must have given you some really interesting insights into yourself and into your style, and honestly, maybe prepared you for some of the 2025 nonsense that's happening.
Yeah, I didn't realize that's what I was doing when I was going through it, but definitely I'm glad to have those experiences to call on, as well as just how my folks were in community and raised me to be in community. It was a similar like caring for your neighbor or the folks that care for you, and just like doing
Mm,
your best to, even if it's like your last $10, to look out for one another when we're in need. So just that, like, we look out for each other and we use our voices to empower each other is just like part of my ethos at this point.
Yeah. So one of the things I'm curious about, so I know part of your work is also as an organizer with the American Friends and Service Committee, which is a long and great organization. And, you do a lot of organizing. As you just were talking about sort of 2025, I mean, obviously the political context currently is in a lot of our minds. And I'm curious to know, how are you seeing young people that you organize and work with thinking about the current moment? And what do you think is the sort of, if you had your sort of finger on the pulse of young people, what do you think is the kind of change that people are interested in or clamoring for now?
It's a really good question. I think when it comes, honestly, a lot of my work touches folks within 40 to 60 range in terms of who engages. So when it comes to what I'm learning from young folks, it's through my like engagement in like young youth spaces. So like bars, social chats, and things like that. The big thing, and I'm thinking of people younger than me, I'm 34, but the biggest thing I'm hearing, like right now, we have an eviction court watch program that we've been doing for some of our eviction prevention work. And we had students from A&T and UCG get in part and take part in it. And the biggest thing we learned is like a lot of folks want to do something. A lot of young folks specifically want to do something, but the problem seems so big, especially how we talk about them in the media. We always talk more nationally, maybe statewide, but in a way that folks can feel like they can have a tangible impact. I think that's been the thing that has really resonated with some of the youth folks we've been working with. So, doing these court watches, being able to observe these cases to help us collect data on making the case of why eviction prevention is our best solution for homelessness. And that has really helped them feel empowered, as if they're able to like contribute, but also many of these students are law students. So it's impacting even how they're thinking about themselves going forward in this profession, exposing them to like organizations like legal aid. Like there are alternatives to justice work that isn't about just representing big places and getting the big bucks, but like doing that civic work of making sure everyone has legal representation. So I think what I'm seeing more of is, yeah, when people get opportunities to engage and learn from themselves, they develop that own connectedness to it.
Yeah, and do you see? You sort of said it embedded in your answer that you kind of engage folks sort of 40 and up more than young people. And what are the differences in either how you see the kind of different generations engaging this moment? Right, you talked a little bit about younger people, but how are kind of older folks that you're working with also engaging this moment?
I think right now, so the biggest reason I'm seeing why I see more are more of our elders. I like to say spending more of their time doing social justice work is just the simple fact they have it. They have a lot more abundance. Some of them are retirees or are on fixed income. So they have more of that time to give versus young adults who are in school. That's already a really challenge in terms of their time management with classes. But just folks who are trying to, or coming out of school and trying to figure out their direction. That it also seems hard to prioritize social justice when you don't know where you're going. So it's kind of like we're meeting people where they are. We're having like deep empathy and grace. It's not like shame on those kids, but I think we're continuing to work on like creative ways. And I say we, I say within American Friends Service Committee, but also my work with the Carolina Federation of, yeah, how will we just make more opportunities for them to be able to touch this work and plug in.
Yeah. You mentioned sort of how in your work you're prioritizing sort of this idea of eviction prevention as a solution to homelessness. I also see that you've done work on other sort of campaigns around preventing houselessness, rental assistance, that sort of thing. Tell us about all of these pockets of work that you do. And I would love to hear from you if there's like a clear through line that you can bring us along with.
Yeah, for me, the queer, the queer.
Well,
Yeah,
accurate.
yeah, accurate. Yeah, that's where. So the clear through line for me is like queerness, and like how I identify queerness is like anything that pushes against the status quo.
Hmm.
So taking care of people, making sure they have housing, definitely against the status quo of what we have right now. Before I was doing solidarity work with undocumented communities and like again, people who are just trying to make a living. And that's very much against the American way, believe it or not. So for me, I just see anything that is for the betterment of people as just like an inherently queer work, and I just work and try to make that the intersection of everything I do is to benefit not just queer community, but all the minority communities that are oppressed by the systems we live in. So a big part of that is eviction prevention and trying to secure funding for legal resources to help folks have representation when they go to eviction court, as well as like preventative measures like mediation and rental assistance, which is one of the biggest contributors to housing stability with programs like the Right to Counsel program we're currently pushing. Same thing with the political grassroots work I've done with Guilford for All and the Federation. It's making sure the people in those seats are elected officials that we pick, we pay. They are in line with the values that we want to see reflected in our communities. So doing things like doing endorsements on candidates, running people's platforms to see collectively as a community, what do we want to see reflected in our candidates that we do endorse, and then hitting the ground to make sure those candidates do win, and then doing the work after to stay in relationship, learn and co-govern from each other so that we are shaping our communities for the better. And then of course the title of my work in like queer and kinky spaces is like a more direct line into my queerness. And even there I'm also trying to do the work of advocating for more queer and kinky folks to get involved with uh, politics and civic engagement as we used to do a lot back in the 70s and 80s. A lot of those people are like teachers or caregivers or people who would understand the roots of some of the problems we face and could really do good work to better shape our communities, but also our state. That's my big goal.
And so we're going to go to a quick break and then we'll come back with Terrell Dungee to talk a little bit more about your work, both in community organizing and also some of your organizing in the kink community, which I think will be pretty interesting. So we'll be right back. Welcome back. This is Power Beyond Pride, a queer change-making podcast. And I am Kenyon Farrow here with my co-host,
Melodie KG.
talking with the amazing Terrell Dungee.
So before the break, we were talking with you about your local organizing, both within housing stability and then little preview of your sort of grassroots organizing of the kink and leather communities, which I love. Curious to know, like when we're talking about change, what would it look like for you to see meaningful change in the state where you are in North Carolina and across the country?
Yeah, I always kind of look at change as these two or the work for change in the two buckets where a lot of things would fall in the bucket of doing activities like we're raising funds, we're making people aware, really rah rah rah. But the change that is being made there is very incremental. And then there is the work of making, specifically working to make material changes. So putting in the work of building strategic plans, putting in the work of making an organizing plan, mapping the folks who can make the change that we're looking for. So for me, that's like parts of them are necessary. For me, I think there are pieces to both of those lanes of change making that are helpful, but the one that's most impactful is the focusing on structural change. So that's been the biggest piece for me, is trying to stay in that lane more and really trying to move the levers of power that will really make a difference.
Absolutely. And one of the ways we see you doing that is around Siembra, North Carolina, around businesses' Fourth Amendment rights, encouraging queer bars and queer spaces to also take part in acts of solidarity and also to help create safety nets for our queer spaces. Would love if you could talk a little bit about that work and sort of, yeah, how you're building on this idea of structural change.
Yeah, so this is from my compas at Siembra and C. They've been doing, again, really great organizing the last few years around undocumented and immigrant communities within the Latinx community. And since the inauguration of Trump and all of the attacks on migrants in our communities, they've been doing a lot of work, not just to educate people in terms of how we share information about ICE and ICE sightings, but also educating communities on their rights when it comes to searches and seizures. What they're working on now is they're seeing a lot of detentions happening in small businesses or like communities, and they're rounding up. I think at this point, it was like 48,000 folks in North Carolina through some of these methods. So to combat that, they're now expanding to doing know your rights trainings with businesses to inform them of their rights when it comes to search and seizures, how they can keep not only themselves as a business, but their staff and the communities that patron their businesses safe. And I've been working locally with one of the Unitarian Universalist churches that recruited me in, because we've been trying to just do some of that similar work for like our queer community. There's not a ton of queer organizing in the Greensboro community. And honestly, I challenge even at the state level. So sometimes you just got to take business into your own hands. We're working on that. And this is one way that we saw like an intersection of, I think a couple of weeks ago, a queer bar in Pittsburgh was raided by the police. Really no rhyme or reason was given, but we know as queer people what that is a sign of. And that means that is a sign of them trying what they can to disrupt our spaces. And I think I want to make sure that we are not only educating people right now in our core communities about how we can keep each other safe, but also build out that safety net of community through doing trainings like this and just being able to identify like these spaces, these businesses, they're safe spaces for me and my community.
Yeah, so it's been interesting in this short period of time. You've talked about so many different kinds of organizing work that you're involved in, which is like pretty astounding. I don't know where you fit sleep in, but I want to know.
Poorly. I fit in very poorly. I will let you know.
I figured as much. but but to that point, so I'm curious, what do you think of the most kind of challenging aspects of organizing, either just as an organizer, organizing in the queer community in North Carolina? And then how do you kind of embrace and ultimately deal with those challenges?
Yeah. I will say the biggest challenge I have been experiencing is resilience. So for me, I mean, it is hard work. It's rewarding work when we win, and I do love to win, but it's still hard work to get to some of those wins. And it's still hard work, and then sometimes you don't win. There's a lot of doors or a lot of calls I have to make. There's a lot of rejections I have to receive. There's a lot of no's that you have to withstand to and persist through. But also, we are living through an authoritarian takeover. And that in itself has an impact on how I show up for my work as well. And not to mention just the 5 years of a global pandemic that we all have unprocessed collective trauma from. So these pieces that chip away at our resilience. For me, it's really been doing the work of building up good skills for regulating and grounding. Like I always tell people, I'm mostly like a feral trash baby, a, a feral trash. I gotta laugh first. A feral trash panda, which I don't know if it's better than a baby or not, but
No.
I've always approached the world. And I'm just like, I am just a beast trying to survive off the scraps that I can find. And now being in a place where luckily this work is quadrupled the pay I got before. I was a delivery driver, and it's been able to not just get me out of a survival state, but also been able to allow me to access more resources to help me build better tools. So therapy, of course. Cannot encourage therapy enough, but also just being able to take more time for myself, take more ownership of my time for care, for vacations, to be in community. That's just been a really good gift. And I will say again, a community has been one of the best things for building resilience. Like knowing who, either locally or just across my very broad chosen family at this point, just who's in my corner when things are hard, who can I lean on, and allowing myself to be able to do that. So that's been one of the challenges, but also the ways I'm working to like work on that.
You mentioned therapy as a tool uh, for folks like you, like us, who are trying to do this sort of retroactive processing of the past 5 years, and then also dealing with this authoritarian takeover situation. But aside from that, like, is there a specific tool or framework or organizing tactic that you found particularly useful in engaging community members, especially when things feel sort of disparate and hard for folks to tap into being in North Carolina?
Yeah. So for me, I always go back to like my organizing tools of listening deeply, trying to find the shared value, but also something that gets underutilized is just like agitating people. And I think a lot of people hear agitation and they feel something more confrontational, something more negatively charged. But for me, agitation is just being like, who benefits from you believing that? Or who benefits from you wanting to leave? Getting people to really sit in the uncertainty that is coming up when they're sharing those fears, sharing those concerns. And, you know, I really love Michelle Obama put it plainly, like, what are you gonna do about it? And I'm really trying to like work to get people to pose that question to people in a way that they can receive it, sit with it, and formulate their what they want to do from there. And that I think that all starts with just like trying to listen deeply and meet folks where they are. I've organized crackheads, I've organized like day drinkers, I've organized like moms and like pickup lines. And it's all about meeting them where they are. I think that's, yeah, the through line for me.
That's beautiful. Let's take a short break here. Stay with us because we will get back in a minute to talk pleasure, plus a rapid fire round of questions to get to know Terrell even better. Welcome back to Power Beyond Pride, where we're talking with the activist, journalist, and powerhouse, Terrell Dungee. I'm Melodie KG, and I'm here with my co-host,
Kenyon.
and we are going to talk pleasure and do a little rapid fire. Love a little rapid fire. Okay, so Terrell, answer these questions sort of off the cuff as quickly as they come to you.
Ugh.
Without trying to. Yeah, I know it's
Okay.
but it's gonna be great. We're gonna help you through it.
I love a game. Well, I got this.
All right. All right. So, first question, what's one thing you're most passionate about?
Hedonism.
Yes, hedonism. Tell us
Okay, now
more.
I need you to say more. I know it's rapid fire.
Well, no,
We need to leave
that's
before.
why I was like, I love that we're talking pleasure. Because for me, hedonism is like the general seeking of pleasure. It's not just like the physical, sexy hedonism, but like for me, it's like sitting in nature. Or when I was explaining this to a coworker, we're sitting on the coast of this continent, like at the ocean that connects us to the rest of the world, and that's so beautiful and pleasurable to me. So it's just the things in life that give you pleasure. I love just finding those mundane, physical or otherwise.
So next question, similar, you're kind of getting there. What's a simple pleasure you appreciate every day?
Cuddling with my husband and our pets.
Cute. What
Uh,
kind of pets do you have?
So I have two doggos and one kitty. The dogs, they're pit bull husky mix, and then a little mutt off the street. He's a little chihuahua. We call him Chico. He's just a menace. And then Gus is our kitty cat.
Oh,
That's
so
so
cute.
cute. I know. You cuddling with your husband and you're like fur babies. And I answered the question for myself. I just thought coffee, and I feel sad for myself right now. A little bit of FOMO. But it's okay.
Yeah, coffee sometimes gets us where we need to be as well. There's like the happy,
But
No.
not this late at night. Not wise.
Yeah, no, not this late.
true. What's one kink that brings you joy?
I don't. Well, I've definitely used it as a seed, but being a brat is like my favorite thing. As an angelic troublemaker who loves challenging systems, challenging men is like my favorite.
Yes. And that goes well with your bit about sort of being an agitator. Right? And also the feral trash panda of it. I might get a little bratty with you, society. Let's go.
100%.
I love that.
All right. What's your love language?
We were just talking about this. I would say physical touch. I am really, as I'm learning what really calms my nervous system. It's like being close with folks I adore, or my pets.
Amazing. Favorite day of the week?
Thursday, because somehow I'm always able to sleep in. I don't hate it. And then I get to see
Wow.
my organizing committees usually. They're super cool.
Oh my gosh, your favorite day is when you get to see your organizing committees?
Yeah.
That's so gay.
I know.
Because they're all of my like meemaws and pop pops. It's like my
Yeah.
old person crew who's like ready to do any and everything for social change. I love them.
Oh man, I love that.
That's lovely.
I should walk that back. Not all of them are older and have grays. Sorry. Shout out Makiba, Esther, our youthful ladies.
Okay, what's a perfect date night?
Probably some good food somewhere where either we can walk or at least walk around before going to a karaoke bar. So just spending an evening out and then giving the crowd a good show before we go home, pass out.
Yes. What's like top 3 go-to karaoke songs?
That's
What you pulling out?
how I was going. Yes.
Well, let's see where we can get. Well, actually, okay. So, "What's Up" by Four Non Blonde is always a great one. I love to throw a little screamo in there.
Legendary.
Kink is My Karma, only because when I performed it recently, I sprained both of my knees. Well, that's how hard I go for my karaoke performances.
I was like, yeah, you were really performing.
Wow.
And then there's always like The Greatest Love of All. I love a good Whitney Houston ballad.
Wow.
That's some range. Okay.
Oh man! So
Look at
I was
you.
a singer in the Triad Pride men's chorus for 10 years. So that's where I started getting my chops.
Oh my gosh. That's so cool. When we talk about the queer movement, we often talk about pride. When we say power beyond pride, what does that mean to you?
For me, it's beyond the queer identity. For me, it's like the intersections where our queerness touches the rest of the world. And how do we show up with that same same pridefulness, that same fire for resistance in those spaces that also need us.
All right. Very good. So, just one more question for you. Where can people find you on the World Wide Web, on social media, if people want to follow your work or get in touch with you, or maybe see some little clips of you on a good karaoke night or even a bad karaoke night.
So I'm always on Facebook. I can't remember the short handle, but it's Terrell Dungee. I think the backslash is just Google it, man, to this day. And then that's mainly what you can find me on to socialize. If you want to get in contact with me about my work, there's always my contact information at American Friends Service Committee, North Carolina. I'm always down to scheme on some good social justice, especially if it's economic justice focused. And then I'm on FetLife because of my involvement in kink community. And you can find me there as well as Instagram, but I don't do it often, but under Phantom Kid or Phantom Cub, excuse me.
Great. We have a little bit of a time left, so I want to go a little bit off script before I close. Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you would like to uplift in this podcast, or any questions you'd like us to ask?
I'm more curious about the conversation of like, what spaces do y'all see more folks in the queer community gravitating to right now in terms of social justice?
Yeah, I think so. For me, where I am in Minneapolis, queer folks are really mobilizing in a lot of different ways, which is really cool to see. We're also doing a lot of queer gatherings, right? House parties, punk shows, even putting together like sort of big or bigger like summer bashes, especially around Pride, and supporting each other with like mutual aid efforts, right? Having rent parties or fundraising for community efforts for folks who need a little bit of help or who are maybe facing being detained. There's some really cool organizing that's happening around the local universities, as well as students are sort of under fire for being international students. So I would say, yeah, mutual aid, gathering in community space, and general just sort of agitation.
Yeah, I think I'm in Cleveland, Ohio, and I think, and also just in the nature of my 9 to 5 working primarily in HIV and kind of public health and global health overall. And that has been a clear front of struggle for a long time. And given what is already happened in terms of gutting the US funding for global health programs, which has, impacted millions of people already. And and then people also mounting a response to the current budget for next year that's being cooked up by Congress to ensure that we still have funding for HIV treatment and prevention programs is a fight. And then locally, a lot of folks, so I'm also the president of our LGBT center locally, president of the board. And we hosted a kind of a town hall meeting last month for people to attend. And we got 350 people to show up, which blew our minds, right?
Yeah.
And so it let us know that people were really ready to do stuff. And we're doing some other kind of organizing. But I think given the particular kind of tones of the kind of anti-trans legislation, the book banning of LGBT books or whatever, there's a lot of just queer specifics kind of stuff happening that seems to be where, and then also including HIV, that's where people are kind of leaning into.
My big hunger right now is to see some of that similar queer organizing in the state of North Carolina. I think it's just trying to figure out why I'm not seeing that. And then like also on top of that question is like what is needed to build it out, because I am also feeling the concern about what does it mean if we lose the funding for the AIDS research and AIDS advocacy, understanding how much was sacrificed and lost for us to get as far as we are with HIV and AIDS and medication and prevention. And yes, what I'm glad to like hear these pieces from you and like the punk rock mutual aid piece as well. I feel like that spirit is always kind of needed in queer movements. So I'm really glad to like get to hear from both of you on that.
Yeah, it's been so great to chat with you, Terrell. Thank you so much for bringing your insights and your energy to this movement. Your work is super important. So we're gonna close out. Thank you so much for being here. Everyone can follow Terrell on some social channels as they see fit, Phantom Cub, or follow their work at AFSC North Carolina.
You can always just Google Terrell Dungee. I'm somehow always in an article. So
Yes. All right. And Google your boy, Terrell Dungee. I'm your co-host, Melodie KG, local provocateur in Minneapolis. You can follow me at Melodie KG on Instagram.
Awesome. And thank you again so much, Terrell. And I'm your co-host, Kenyon Farrow. And you can follow me pretty much at all the platforms, just at my name, at Kenyon Farrow. And for those of you listening, remember to subscribe and get your friends to subscribe to Power Beyond Pride on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And also check out our website at powerbeyondpride.com.
Power Beyond Pride is a project from A Great Idea, a queer-owned design and content agency. Learn more about them at agreatidea.com.
This episode is produced by Shane Lucas. Asmita Sarkar is the project developer. Our editor is Jared Redding, with support from Ian Wilson.
We are both part of this podcast's awesome host team, and we invite you to send in your questions and comments at powerbeyondpride.com.
Check out our new episodes each week, and we look forward to queer change making with you next time. Thank you from all of us at Power Beyond Pride.